Welcome to Jackson Reviews, the channel where I go through the best and worst horror movies so you don't have to. I'm Sam Jackson and today we're going to finally be ending the Friday series with the last current Friday movie, God knows when we're finally going to get number 13, Friday the 13th, 2009. Now, this movie for me is very strange. Firstly, it's not a remake. It's a little bit like Halloween H2O, the fact it kind of reboots the timeline a little bit, because this new Friday movie takes place after the original and is a direct sequel to it, ignoring all the previous ones, but still basically remaking parts 2 to 4, because that makes sense apparently. And with tons of other references to some of the other later films, it may as well just be a really awkward best-of album, and it's honestly a little bit unnecessary in my opinion. The only real new parts of the film include the setting, which is modern day, it's 2009, a much more diverse cast who point it out quite often, and easily the most realistic interpretation of Jason to date, and honestly, one of my favourites. But because of the fact that this remakes parts 2 to 4 and just homages so many of them, I honestly couldn't be asked just listing every single one in individually during the review, so I've kind of summed it all up towards the end and I'll eventually go into that. But anyway, with all that out of the way, let's get into this review of Friday the 13th. The movie begins where the original left off, revealing a young Jason seeing Mrs. Voorhees' death by original survivor girl Alice. Jason rushes to her, lifting up her locket with a picture of her in it, and grabs Mrs. Voorhees' machete. Guess what he's going to do with that 30 years later? Fast forward to 2009 and we meet a group of truly bland victims and final girl Whitney. They decide to visit Camp Crystal Lake and camp out because they found tons of weed, fuck it, it's 2009, and that's when we figure out exactly how dumb these characters are. Two of them go off to have sex, one of them walks into the woods alone, and the other two decide to randomly explore this abandoned campsite. Anyway, a lone one gets butchered, the couple's split up after hearing something in the woods. Yes, this film has a I hear something outside, I'm gonna go investigate it cliche. And the guy finds the alone guy's body, he runs back to camp, he finds his girlfriend being cooked alive above a fucking campfire while she's trapped in a fucking sleeping bag. But before he can even save it, his leg is caught in a bear trap, allowing Jason to finish his cooking. Leatherface would be very proud. The two who are exploring find Jason's locket of Mrs. Voorhees, which is when we get an early version of Batman vs Superman's Martha thing.
It looks like you.
Throwback to the decapitated Mrs. Voorhees thing, and then Whitney's boyfriend is killed when Jason gets too excited about using his new machete. We get our first final girl run in forever, when new Jason chases after her. Whitney gets to camp and finds Jason's cooking and trapping skills. She tries to help out the bear trap guy, but new Jason can sprint, and he really likes to show it in this movie. He runs towards him and slams his machete into the other guy's head, and a small little fun fact for you, that was actually CGI. I generally thought it was practical, so well done to their special effects artists. Jason looks like he's going to kill Whitney, but instead we get a title card. And then we figure out the biggest issue of this scene, it was 25 minutes long. That's an issue when the original version of this film is 96 minutes, but luckily for us, I'm going through the extended cut, which is 105 minutes, so that's gonna be fun. Fast forward again about 6 weeks and we get another group of boring undeveloped characters, except Jenny, who is the second final girl in this movie, since it's a remake of 3 films in one. We also get to meet these film's politically correct characters, Chewie and Lawrence, who are the only victim characters I like in this movie because they're banterous as fuck. We then meet Sam from Supernatural, who is looking for his sister Whitney. There's a short bitching session, which is only there for a dick measuring contest, and the group of victims head toward Jenny's boyfriend Trent's place. But he's a dead character, let's just say that, and his place is the new Higgins Haven. We get tons of boring exposition from these characters with forced development. It just shows them all to be really shallow people except for Jenna, and obviously Sam from Supernatural. We also get to see that Jenna and Trent aren't really doing well because Trent's a bit of a dick, and Sam from Supernatural is learning about the legend of Jason Voorhees from the cryptic townsfolk. Jason then gets bored of all this and he needs a bit of a warm-up kill. So this random guy who starts groping a mannequin, Jason is not too happy with. The guy grabs Jason's bag off his head and starts being very rude to him, and it turns out new Jason is also a teacher, so decides to teach this mannequin shagger a lesson. He cuts his throat open with a machete, and to be honest, even though it's apparently a bit CGI, I think it looks quite good. Before Jason can put the bag back on though, he notices an old hockey mask, and in a really great moment, he puts it on for the first time. A nice callback to the fact that this didn't actually happen in part 3, Jason just walked out of the barn with it already on. The two victims want to have fun on the lake with Trent's boat, but he won't let them for obvious reasons, so just to once again show how shitty these characters are, the two of them steal it. The film shows us some really awkward nudity, and it's really common in this film, and it's really horrible throughout the whole thing, but lucky for us, Jason's doing some hunting. He fires an arrow through this guy's head, causing the boat to go out of control, and then the boat hits the girl. She sees Jason and tries to swim away, but she hides under a dock, which Jason is already at apparently, and because Jason wants to see her tits, he stabs her through the head, lifting her up for all the immature virgins to enjoy this movie for. Sam from Supernatural visits the house for no apparent reason, and Jen offers to help him, and that annoys Trent because Trent is a dick. The two find some clues and end up at Camp Crystal Lake, where it gets dark out really quickly, and we get some random horror voodoo shit from the Evil Dead for no real reason until they decide to head back to the cabin. Jason returns about that same time though, and we get a pretty nice sequence where this newer, smarter Jason is trying to find him, but he realises something's not right. And luckily, because obviously those two are going to be the last couple of survivors, they escape. But before they fully escape, they trip an alarm, which works well for storytelling, revealing how smart new Jason is and that Sam from Supernatural's sister is still alive. This is basically because she looks like Mrs. Voorhees, aka the Mouth Thing from Batman vs Superman, and there's a weird moment where Jason shows a bit of emotion, which I honestly kind of like, and then Jason gets mad and chases the two of them. We once again see how shitty these characters are when Trent cheats on his girlfriend in this really cheesy and unneeded and very graphic sex scene. Chewie heads outside for a little bit and bumps into Jason, who is not in the mood for his jokes, and after a brief struggle he kills him with a screwdriver. Whitney finally escapes and we get to the film's second Survivor Girl run, when she finds all the dead bodies. She escapes quite easily with Jason gone and runs to the cabin, but since Trent is a cheating son of a bitch, she's captured again by Jason. Jenna and Sam from Supernatural then also reach the cabin, and they warn the others. Jenna finds out how much of a cheating asshole her boyfriend is, but before they can do anything about it, Lawrence goes out to help Chewie. He finds him dead, and after he puts up a pretty great fight and runs back to the cabin, Jason impales him by throwing an axe in his back. Jason then uses Lawrence to actually coax the others out, but since they're all dicks, none of them try to save him, so Jason kills him. The characters freak out and call the police, only for Jason to cut out the power, then the group splits up. Jason somehow gets on top of the roof of the cabin and in through a window to kill off this random girl who was shagging Trent. A cop from earlier in the film arrives and is swiftly killed by Jason, and then Trent gets a gun out of his ass and shows us just how trick-app he is. God bless the USA. The group run outside and try to get in a cop car, but Jason isn't a fan of that, so throws Trent's one-night stand onto the car, causing the group to split up. Jenna and Sam from Supernatural run past like a couple of dead bodies, and Trent tries to hitchhike away. We get some tension about if the driver's Jason or not because it's a reboot and you never know with these things, but the real Jason appears behind Trent. He impales him like through the guts and up with a machete, and when he picks him up it's so fucking gory and it's pretty damn cool, but ends up impaling him on the back of a truck where he is driven away. Now onto the final act of the movie, where the final two find Whitney at Camp Crystal Lake because, hey, let's just get all this finished. We get a sweet reunion moment and the three survivors run away, but since there can only be one final girl, Jenna is impaled and pulled backwards by Jason, proving that the second set of characters really were completely useless. We get a chase sequence which lasts for ages before we get another throwback. The two run into the barn for like the final showdown, Jason appears in another nice little throwback, then he and Sam from Supernatural have a fight by a woodchipper. We then get a third throwback when Whitney uses a locket to distract Jason, so Sam from Supernatural can do a fourth throwback where after stabbing Jason with a bear trap, he wraps a chain around his neck, similar to the look he has in parts 6 to 10. Whitney then throws the other end of a chain into the wood chipper, and we get a fifth throwback when Jason's hung from the top of the barn, and eventually after being stabbed by Whitney, his head falls back into the wood chipper, killing him. In the morning, the two drop Jason's body into the lake along with his mask and locket, and then suddenly, because he does it in every other movie, Jason comes back to life. He grabs Whitney, and then the film ends with a hard cut to black. Kinda ends my Friday the 13th series on a little bit of an anticlimax and quite a downer, didn't it? Apparently there was already a second film that they were preparing which was meant to come out the year afterwards, but that never materialised. So this ends on a cliffhanger which will generally never be resolved. Since the series now belongs to Paramount, Platinum literally can't make their sequel, and Paramount won't own the complete rights to be able to make that sequel, so we're generally stumped for that. But overall, just for the production, I'd actually say this is some of the best directing we've seen in the series for a very long time. Not difficult in retrospect. Fuck you, Ronnie, you. I don't know, I've never liked this movie. I've never really disliked it. but all the stuff that I like about this movie, it's been done before in much better, like, previous entries. The only parts about this film which are new are stuff that I don't particularly like, or stuff that just seems really forced for the sake of, look, this is 2009. And for me, that's not good storytelling. I mean, the main story, even though it was apparently accidental, is the entire search for Sam from Supernatural's sister. And like I said, the writers didn't even do that intentionally to parody or homage, like, the relationship from the final chapter, which kind of proves how lazy their writing is when they literally copied a previous movie and couldn't even be asked to check. The actual casting, though, I sort of liked. They definitely got all the stereotypes of the characters down to a nutshell. And I will openly admit, the part where Jenna dies towards the end, I was quite shocked and I was quite sad to see her character die. Granted, it's because they were only 3 characters I truly liked during this movie, and she was one of the 3, but you know, it was still shocking to see because you don't expect that kind of stuff from a Friday movie, but then again, you don't expect 2 final girls in a Friday movie, so tomato tomato. They also did the impossible of somehow getting, like, a final boy in who was actually interesting to watch, who wasn't Tommy Jarvis. Like, obviously he was, like, based on Rob Dyer accidentally, the guy from Part 4 was looking for his sister, but I thought it was quite cool, the fact that I was actually kind of rooting for this dude to live, which is rare for a slasher movie. And I think they did it really well. I'm also just going to mention throughout the whole film, the lighting. Even though a lot of people slag it off, I really like it. It's very naturalistic, even though you can tell, like, a lot of it's done in studios and stuff like that. And I think it looks really good throughout because it's got that dark, gritty feel that the film's going for. Like, even in the daylight, the shadows really contrast, and it just looks really dark and dingy, and I think that really works in the film's favour, at least it does for me. I also love the new design of Jason for the fact it was like a massive combination of all the 11 previous movies, and it was a really nice little thing for fans to look for, and even newcomers who obviously won't understand a lot of references, but you didn't have to understand the references in this movie to like it, and when it comes to a reboot, that's honestly key. If the only things you do is focus on the original fans, you're not going to grow the series. This is growing the series, but because of the fact that so much of it was just a remake and a rehash of previous things, it also stopped the series from allowing itself to grow, if you get what I mean. Basically, like I said earlier, the stuff that was new was shit, the stuff that was old was great, so this movie was a little bit unnecessary. Honestly, what I think we should have done is, instead of doing so many little throwbacks, maybe just had like a couple, like the Jason picking up the mask and stuff, keep all of that. But for like the kills, which were just a homage to the original, and all like the story elements, which is just a homage to the original, just there was no point to them except to say, hey, you who's watching this movie, who's definitely seen a previous one, look at this thing we did, aren't you proud? No, filmmakers, I want to see something new. I'm not proud. I'm very disappointed. One thing I definitely don't give enough attention to, though, which this film nails massively, is the soundtrack. Like, throughout the whole thing, there's that sense of dread, and anytime the new Jason appears, like, the music intensifies really aggressively, and it's not the stereotype, like, high-pitched violins, it's kind of industrial-esque, and I think it works really well throughout the film. The 5 fun facts, a lot of them are kind of the way that they did throwbacks to the original. I'm sorry for that, but that's generally all this film is. But the first one is the fact that the design for Jason was mostly based on Jason from parts 2 and part 4 for his unmaskedness. You can kind of see it with the fact that Jason has hair, similar to how he does in part 2, and the part 4-ness, just the kind of folded in face that he has. And I quite liked that. The mask was also kind of based between the 3rd and 4th movies versions of the mask, but with a much more gritty, kind of old look to it, and I thought that worked also well. The film was made by Michael Bay's company Platinum Dunes, who also did both the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake and the Amityville Horror remake, so they're setting the bars high, especially since the next remake that they did was A Nightmare on Elm Street, which was fucking awful. The good news is, though, they haven't done any remakes since Nightmare on Elm Street, so we won't have to suffer through that shit ever again. The film kind of combines the first 4 movies, with the beginning of the movies showing the end of the original film. The 2nd and 4th movies mostly being about like the brother-sister relationship and all that stuff, as well as like the fact that you've basically got 2 films in one, with a short film at the beginning and the actual film afterwards. That's basically showing parts 2 with all like the people around the campfire and stuff like that. Then you go into Higgins Haven, or whatever this place is called, for the main film, which is part 3. As well as Jason obviously evolving between all 3 movies from start to finish, where at the beginning he's a child, when he goes into the part where he's wearing the bag on his head, then he goes into hockey mask, then he goes into extreme hockey mask mode, but he's got a bunch of scratches all across it like he does in part 4, and it was nice. Even though he was contacted for the role, Derek Myers, who played Jason Voorhees in this movie, he wasn't originally actually going to be cast because producers thought he was too nice. Yeah, Myers responded in like the best way I've ever seen by saying he used to be a cage fighter and that he has some serious daddy problems. He was cast about 2 days later. The movie is written by Damien Shannon and Mark Swift, who also wrote Freddy vs. Jason. Obviously, in those 6 years, they really hadn't learned how to write a good character yet, had they? And a bonus fun fact is the fact that this movie and all its stuff will probably never actually be in the video game. And that's literally just because it's the only film at the moment that Gun Media don't own any rights to, even though they are currently trying, so hey, that fun fact may be out of date by the time I post this video. Now, this is exclusively just for the remake. We're going to get a bonus round, and also because I kind of want to cap off this series by remembering some of the best bits. This is a homage list where basically this movie just pays homage or completely copies an idea that was in a previous film, even if it was not on purpose, such as the brother-sister stuff from parts 2 and 4. So hey, let's go through it in order of the movies that it was released in. Group of characters sit around a campfire whilst discussing what happened in the original movie, homage to part 2. Jason's shack being found, also part 2. Jason having a sack over his head, part 2. Mrs. Voorhees' decapitated head being kept, also part 2. Jason slashes through a window and gives people a bear hug, also part 2. Using Mrs. Voorhees' lookalike to distract Jason, also part 2. The house party whilst their parents are away or some other kind of reason, from part 3. Jason gets his hockey mask, part 3. Hanging Jason from part 3. Sam from Supernatural looking for his sister, similar to Rob from the final chapter, from part 4. Someone who's previously had sex being thrown onto a car, from part 4. The movie has 13 kills to represent both the series and the amount of kills that are used for the final chapter. Excessive nudity, a reference to part 5. The final showdown being in a barn as reference to parts 3 and part 5. Wrapping a train around Jason's neck, similar to his look in part 6 all the way to parts 10. Sleeping bag kill, similar to previous sleeping bag kills that are used in part 7 and part 10. Jason comes back to life at the very end for sequel baiting. All of them. Now, a slight bonus one is the fact that Trent's impalement is apparently meant to homage the way that Sally Hardesty escaped in the original Texas Chainsaw movie, so the more you know. Now, overall, did I enjoy this movie? I don't know. Honestly, everything that I enjoyed about this film I'd seen before, so I can't really shout with praise when I've slagged off so many of the other films for ripping off certain kills and certain stuff like that, but I mean, it's not bad, and it's kind of what you'd want for a soft reboot, because it is rebooting a lot of the continuity of the franchise, but without the sequel or anything that follows it, it's kind of stand out for being unnecessary and just seems a little bit like producers wanted to get the rights to a movie, or they just really wanted to have their name on a franchise, or they just wanted money. And that's a serious issue for me. The defense though that this was just made for money is very evident, with the fact that after the film's second weekend box office didn't do as well as they'd hoped, they just didn't talk about doing a sequel anymore. I mean, the movie still made $100 million nearly, on a $20 million budget, which is pretty damn good. And because the second weekend wasn't good, they're like, no, not doing it. I wanted more money. And before someone in the comments yells at me for but they're all sequels, reboots, etc. for money, yes, they are to some extent, but there's a lot of films that even though they haven't done that well for the box office as much as people were intending, they're still going to do lots of sequels from. A good example of this is the Puppet Master franchise, which even though it doesn't make much money, and none of them have ever actually gone to cinema, not officially, there's nearly 12 of those movies, so they're not making them for money, they're making them because they want to, whilst this is made solely for money, and that's kind of an issue for me, and an issue of a lot of the other Friday movies. So I wouldn't say that I enjoyed the film, but I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy it. It's a very weird middle ground, but for my ranking videos next week, I'm probably not going to rank it that high just to that fact, but it's not bad. I'll just say it right now, it's not a bad film. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, please try to like, share and subscribe. Next week, God knows what I'm doing, because I'm just going to do a bunch of random videos, and then the week after that, hopefully I'm finally going to do my Cloverfield reviews like I planned on doing ages ago, and then I'm going to move on to a series I'm planning on doing, where it's going to be 5 sets of movies, and that's all I'm going to reveal for now. Goodbye.